Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. Another week, another big match, as Manchester City hosted Spurs in the Premier League. Pep and Poch are two of the best tacticians around, and delivered a fascinating encounter which ended 2-2 thanks to goals from Sterling and Aguero for City and Lamela and Moura for Spurs. Now, let's take a look at some of the tactics used, and remember to drop anything else you notice in the comments. But just quickly, if you're new around here and want to see more football videos, go ahead and hit subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, a like would be great. Feel free to drop video suggestions below as well. Now, let's get into it. Just a quick reminder of the formations, as City used their trusty 4-3-3 as shown. In response, Spurs used a 4-3-3, but a much narrower version. Let's look at what the home team did in possession. As always, City looked to build up from the back with their centre-backs receiving the ball off Ederson to begin play. During this phase, Spurs would defend in something resembling a 4-4-1-1 and were happy to allow City to have the ball in the first phase and be relatively uncontested. When Liverpool pressed higher in a prior match, it freed the City fullbacks and an aerial pass would leave them struggling for numbers, so Pochettino wanted to avoid this. At the same time, City always wanted three central players in the build-up to try draw Spurs into a press and out of position, or just to play around Kane, who was usually the sole presser. This back three could be formed by Ederson pushing up, Walker tucking in, or Rodri dropping back to give them the numerical advantage. Having moved higher up the pitch, Spurs had a clear defensive plan. They wanted to remain compact both vertically and horizontally in order to reduce the space available for City to penetrate through the centre. In addition, it would mean City's inverted wingers would most likely be cutting into traffic, whilst cutting supply to City's influential central midfielders, which they often accomplished. Usually, Zinchenko plays as an inverted fullback, but Spurs' game plan meant that he opted to stay wider to provide some width. This became a theme on the left, as he pushed high looking for a quick switch, and often Sterling would tuck in order to occupy Walker-Peters. Or, if Zinchenko was tucked in, Sterling himself would hug the touchline. This would mean either City got lots of room out wide, or if Spurs anticipated this, they would become less compact, opening up gaps for Gundogan and De Bruyne, both of whom were pushed high enough to cause indecision when a wide midfielder wanted to press. It is important to note that during this phase, Pochettino kept Eriksen and Lamela high, so wide overloads were a possibility. On the right hand side, a slightly different but familiar tactic. Again, to try break Spurs' compact shape, City would usually overload one side and then quickly switch to the other. Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne linked up well as always. In this position, De Bruyne would be between a centre-back, central midfielder and fullback, causing indecision. If the fullback went to Silva, De Bruyne would run into the channel and attempt a cross, as we often saw in the first half. But if the fullback was more conservative, Bernardo Silva would gain time on the ball. Again, Spurs were eager for counterattacks, keeping Eriksen and Lamela high. With Walker dropping into a back three, it meant that Eriksen was often marking Walker as opposed to doubling up. So, City had joy repeating this pattern and getting crosses into the box and creating chances. This is not to say this worked every time. In the second half, Pochettino adjusted to this, and Eriksen was instructed to track the wide areas rather than Walker. And Ndombele was always eager to move across the pitch and was disciplined, meaning that the supply to De Bruyne was reduced. But this region was crucial to both City goals. The first City goal shows City overloading the left-hand side, and note, Zinchenko being high and wide. Silva and De Bruyne maintained some width, and City begin a quick switch, and Eriksen's attention is more fixed on Walker, which allows Kevin De Bruyne into space. With all attention on him, Bernardo is freed, and again, the position means that Spurs weren't sure who to pick up, allowing De Bruyne the free cross. For the second ball, again Eriksen is drawn to Walker, allowing De Bruyne between the fullback and centre-back. It goes wide to Silva, and De Bruyne makes the run to provide the cross. But Spurs were dangerous in this phase, with City pushing De Bruyne and Gundogan high, and with Zinchenko being high as opposed to slotting into midfield. It meant that often on the break, Eriksen and Lamela could combine, causing a 2 versus 1 in that region against Rodri. They got into these dangerous positions but often weren't able to finish. But how about Spurs in steady possession? Like City, they were keen to play out of the back and used a lopsided system to do so. City were pressing high in this phase in a 4-4-2, with De Bruyne joining Aguero. So in order to try and outnumber them, Walker-Peters would drop in, forming a back 3. Danny Rose would push high and wide left, allowing Eriksen to tuck into his favoured central positions. At the same time, Winks and Dembele formed double pivots to try and provide options. City did compact these spaces well with their pressing, but if they managed to go wide to Walker-Peters, as Winks shifted across, a triangle would form and they could play out. Often though, City's high press meant they were able to win the ball in these areas, and Lloris wasn't the most comfortable on the ball. However, in the second half, Pochettino shifted to a traditional back 4 phase during the build-up, so City's wingers, especially Sterling on the right, were more occupied with marking the fullbacks. And because Zinchenko was high and wide in this match, Sissoko would push up into this space, looking to counter into where Zinchenko wasn't. This pattern of play led to their first goal. Sissoko is high in the space, drawing Zinchenko, so he can't close Lamela down. As discussed, City's high press leaves space in the midfield, so De Bruyne isn't back in time to pick up Lamela, who gets the ball between the lines for the finish. Overall though, the XG was 3.29 for City to Spurs' 0.19, confirming that this result flattered Spurs, thanks to wasteful finishing and a keeper error from City. If Spurs are to contend this season, Pochettino will want to rectify this, whilst Pep will be hoping that this was just an unlucky day. But what do you think? Let everyone know in the comments below. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.